Hello, my name is Matthew Darlitz and I'm the Editor-in-Chief of The Neuropsychotherapist. The Neuropsychotherapist is a quarterly e-magazine devoted to informing psychotherapists about the latest neurobiological, psychological and somatic knowledge to enhance their clinical practice, and the magazine has a multidisciplinary biopsychosocial perspective. And our hope is that this publication will give you news, reviews and the latest research from the complementary fields that will be valuable to your research and to your practice. We're also the home of the International Journal of Neuropsychotherapy. This is an open access online journal that publishes articles on various aspects of integrative biopsychosocial issues related to psychotherapy. The aim of the journal is to explore the neurobiological and other underpinnings of mental states and disorders to advance the therapeutic practice of psychotherapy. And on this weekly video blog, as we normally do, we're going to go across to Richard Hill in Sydney to see what he's discovered this week. Thanks, Richard.
Well, hello again from Richard Hill at the Mind Science Institute, and what's been going on this week in the wonderful area of neuroscience. Now, the thing that I found interesting was looking at, basically it's the principle of how much control do we have, or how much organisation do we have between our mind and our body systems. And in this case, this interesting little study by Matthias Cox and his group at the Radboud University in the Netherlands, they were looking at the nature of mind over immune system and the aspect of the immune system and resilience that comes from really strengthening up. Because what they looked at is an interesting guy, a Dutch celebrity daredevil. I love these things. Dutch celebrity daredevil Wim Hof, H-O-F. And apparently he's legendary. He goes up and sort of lies in the snow and sits in the cold. But he has this enormous resilience to going into the outside, into nature and surviving in very difficult circumstances. So they thought they'd test him and look at what was going on, and they tested his immune system. So they went in and they looked and they found that his immune system was more resilient, more effective in relation to a particular immune system test that they had good back data of and fairly large data of. So anyway, they thought, well, okay, maybe that's not enough. So they got a whole bunch of people to go off with Wim Hof and train in this sort of rigorous, harsh endurance type of training and come back and do the test. And then they had a control group that were just ordinary, poor, Netherlandy people. And what they found was that the entire group of the ones who went off with Wim Hof, again, also had better response in their immune systems. Now what's interesting is, as they looked at it, whether it was the endurance stuff, how much this harsh sort of resilience, that maybe just in the West we're too soft in what we do, but there was also a breathing process that was engaged, and the breathing process was terribly important in strengthening and engaging the immune system. And this all goes back to the enormous importance in understanding that macrophages, which of course are a vital part of our immune system upregulation when there are problems, that macrophages actually have receptors for neurotransmitters, and they actually have they secrete neurotransmitters. So there's a conversation between the brain and the immune system, a direct conversation. And can we enhance that? And how would we enhance it? Well, one of the ways, I suppose, to enhance it is activity-dependent responses. So obviously, if you're active, if you're working with your resilience, if you're out there in the environment, toughing it with a whole bunch of different stimuli, you may well enhance the nature of the receptors. And remember that receptors are the thing that determine how much something is noticed, not how much stuff is in there. It's the receptors that actually are the important thing. So if you increase gene expression to increase receptors then this will increase the degree of communication and the effectiveness of the communication between the brain and the immune system. So that's really cool. Now this has all been written up in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. Reference will be below. Have a look at that. Really interesting. Now, what's happening? By the way, this was initially in Nature News, called Behavioural Training Reduces Inflammation. So that's really interesting. That was the other thing. They found that the Wim Hof group had a higher regulation of anti-inflammatory interleukin 10, as different from the inflammatories of interleukin 1, 2 and 6. So that was interesting. That was interesting too. And mind and matter engaging, the capacity for activity-dependent gene expression through mental engagement. Really interesting. Now, what's something that's interesting going on? Now, here's a group that you may not have heard of, CARTA, C-A-R-T-A. Now, I'll read out their thing. It's the Centre for Academic Research and Training in Anthropogeny. Now, that's just looking, and they put it in there, to explore and explain the origins of the human phenomenon. Now, they're an interesting group. Go in there. I'll give the website below, and they have webinars, they have symposiums. They seem to have good support, so most of their stuff is free. You certainly can join for free and just check out their stuff. So go check them out. CARTA, they're very interesting. They've just done some interesting stuff on this anthropology of human development, and they have quite a history of that. So there we go. Are we too soft? Do we need to get out there and toughen it up a bit? Be like Bear Grylls or something and get out there and be a bit tougher? And where do we come from anyway? How is it that we make up our human existence? Those are a couple of things for this week. As always, be creative, create wonderful things, be wonderful, and see you next time. Bye.
Well, thank you very much, Richard. And the notes for everything that Richard has been talking about will be below this video. This week, on the International Journal of Neuropsychotherapy, we've published a paper by Paul Witz and Tatiana Kamorina. I hope I said that right. And it's the 4-stage hierarchical model of image construction and drawing production, evidence from visual hallucinations development and pathologic regression in art. Now, the interesting thing about this paper is that the model maps the developmental stages of image reproduction, and the interesting aspect for us as clinicians is that we might be able to use this model to rate patients, to rate clients based on the drawings that they produce for us. So I'm just going to play just the very last bit of the video abstract for this paper, where Paul explains this concept for therapists.
Also relevant here is that I think that the model is potentially useful for people who do therapy with persons suffering from various kinds of trauma or mental illness. For example, it could be someone with serious psychiatric problems, somebody that you're doing therapy with who has Alzheimer's or has had a stroke. In such cases, the model is available to be used to score the drawings that these people make. It's easy for people to make drawings, and it's common to do it, but you can score them at level 1, 2, 3, or 4. Often they'll be at a level in between, a mixture of 2 and 3, or a very high level 2 would be a complex geometric pattern, not just a simple square. That might be one, and that might score at level 2.7 or something like that. But in any case, these can be scored, and you can get a measure of where the person is at the time they did those drawings that you scored. And then over time, you can get a measure as to whether that person is presumably improving or declining or regressing. So the model is potentially useful then, I think, for people doing therapy with persons of the kind that I've just mentioned. It's also, I hope, of some use or some stimulation, shall we say, for people doing work on the neuroscience of vision itself. In any case, I hope that when you read it, you find something interesting and something useful to take away. Thank you.
Well, I hope you enjoy this paper, and I'd love to hear from clinicians who are using this model to rate patients with certain psychopathologies according to their ability to reproduce images. Now, as we normally do, we're going to go across to Dr. Dave in California to find out what's been happening on his show, Shrink Rap Radio. Thanks, Dr. Dave.
Hello, Matthew. Dr. Dave here with a from Shrink Wrap Radio with another one of my weekly reports. And this week I spoke to a London-based forensic psychologist by the name of Dr. Nina Burrows. And in addition to being a forensic psychologist, she also refers to herself as the cartooning psychologist. And I must confess, I've never met someone who called themselves a cartooning psychologist before, so that made her particularly interesting to me, as well as the fact that she's also a listener regularly to Shrink Wrap Radio, and that always gives people a boost up in terms of possibly becoming a guest if they have something to share and professional credentials and all. So I begin in the interview exploring her career as a forensic psychologist, and actually she is a research psychologist. She is a research psychologist who is specialized in rape and sexual abuse, and studying phenomena around that and making recommendations to the court and so on. So one of the things that we explored is a report that she wrote for the UK having to do with 10 myths having to do with rape. And so we kind of stepped through each of those 10 myths, and that could be of interest to potential listeners out there. And then we got into her cartooning work, which I found to be very fascinating. She considered herself not to be an artist, and she got into it actually as a way of de-stressing from dealing with the very serious topics of rape and sexual abuse during her day job. And then when she got home, how does she come down from all of that? Well, one way to do that was to kind of doodle and then to kind of get serious about trying to study drawing a bit. And she used the book Drawing from the Right Side of the Brain, I think it is, and was able to progress. And as a result, she ended up writing a couple of books that are designed maybe for therapists, but also for therapists to distribute to clients who might be suffering from rape or sexual abuse. One of the books is titled, I think, The Courage to Be, and the other one is something about authenticity. I don't remember the exact title. But she's illustrated these books with cartoons, which in a way makes the content more palatable, easier to digest, more kind of friendly, and helps to detoxify the violence and the serious connotations that would normally accompany something that you would write on those topics. And these two books are available from her website for free, which is www.ninaburrows.com, and Burrows is spelled BURROWES.com. They're also available from Amazon.com in both paper and Kindle versions. So I highly recommend these books, if nothing else, to any therapists out there, either to read themselves and or to loan to clients who might get considerable value from them. So I found Dr. Burrows to be a very intriguing person to interview, and I think that your audience will appreciate this interview. At least I hope so. So this is Dr. Dave in Northern California signing off once again and saying back to you, Matthew.
Thank you, Dr. Dave. Well, that's about all we have time for this week. I hope you found something interesting in this video blog. Have a fantastic week, and I hope that you'll tune in next week for another video blog on the neuropsychotherapist. Goodbye.